Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. In the news, from the Sputnik, Bank of England had UK to face more inflation than other major economies. Year-on-year inflation in the United Kingdom has reached 9.1%, marking the highest point since 1982, and it looks like the numbers will only go higher. The governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, has warned that inflation will hit Brits harder than other major economies in the wake of the ongoing energy crisis. I think the UK economy is probably weakening rather earlier and somewhat more than others, he said. There will be circumstances in which we will have to do more. With energy prices soaring amid the West's collective push to sanction Russia over its military operation in Ukraine, the UK is among those most affected, with its annual inflation eclipsing 9%. And this is another example as to the reasons why America's allies will hate her. As it is written, the beast shall hate the whore in Revelation the 17th chapter. According to Bailey's estimates, things are unlikely to get better anytime soon. His gloomy forecast was accompanied by a pledge to aggressively increase interest rates in response. However, in doing this, it will backfire. Bailey said it was possible that rates would be raised by 50 points at the BOE's next meeting in August, noting that the bank had many options of forceful action. However, such action might backfire. Why? Because by increasing interest rates too fast, too aggressively, a recession will then become more likely. According to estimations by British academic and author Rodney Atkinson, the government is spending very large sums trying to compensate everyone for energy price rises and helping the poor directly with direct payments, but the sudden rise to over 9% in inflation is a big shock to the consumer. And again, what is inflation? Inflation is the increase or the general increase in the cost of goods and services due to the expansion of money supply within an economy. That is inflation by definition. He says, and the government cannot afford to help more, as state spending has already caused high taxes and borrowing is getting more expensive as interest rates rise. Atkinson went on to note that the most recent rise in oil prices triggered by the Western sanctions against Russia, and notice that the West is being mentioned repetitively here in this article, which shows us that these nations are eventually going to put the blame on America, Babylon the Great, for their current and future worsening situations. Hits everyone, consumers and producers. This is a political and economic crisis for Boris Johnson, the academic says. While energy and food costs rise for everyone in the UK, and he raises taxes on businesses large and small, his so far $2.3 billion donation of Ukraine, is not well received. Kevin Dodd, professor of finance and economics at Durham University, echoes the sentiment, saying that inflation is causing a lot of economic pain, and most especially to poorer households that are the most vulnerable. Inflation is almost entirely the fault the Bank of England, which had forgotten the importance of the expanding money supply as the primary cause of inflation, and then got completely blindsided when inflation surged, as monetarist economists said it would. Dodd says, adding that Bank of England executives should resign. The bank's measures to support the British economy, according to Dodd, are mostly counterproductive. Why? Because they will be increasing interest rates very aggressively in a rapid succession, and do little to ensure the economy's long-term health and growth. And in so doing, it will only increase the likelihood of a recession and encourage hyperinflation and stagflation. The UK is not the only nation to struggle with economic hardship following the West's decision to impose sanctions on Russia over the military operation in Ukraine. Heads of the US Federal Reserve and European Central Bank also offered pessimistic views on the period to come, indicating that it is likely to be marked by higher inflation. Right. The Eurozone has reportedly year-on-year inflation of 8.1%, with the US reaching 8.6% and Canada crossing 7.7%. This concludes that article. In other news, the EU told to prepare for economic hammering, forget wildly optimistic plans to replace Russian gas, also published by the Sputnik. Economists on both sides of the Atlantic have recently urged their respective publics to prepare for a recession and possibly a stagflationary crisis amid surging inflation and soaring energy costs, exacerbated by Washington and Brussels. Moves aimed at dramatically reducing dependence on Russian oil and gas. The European Union's plan to replace Russian gas before the end of the current year isn't only wildly optimistic, but will add to the economic woes the bloc is already facing. London headquartered microeconomic forecasting consultancy TS Lombard has predicted. Takahide Kuchi, an economist at the Tokyo-based Nomura Research Institute economic consultancy, warned in a research note Tuesday that if the crisis surrounding the Nord Stream 1 shortfall escalates, Brussels could add gas to the list of other Russian energy supplies that have been banned or semi-banned. This, he predicted, would push the Eurozone into a sharp slowdown and plunge Germany into a recession. In other news, from the RT, recession in US and EU more likely than not, analysts. Major Western economies should expect a significant growth slowdown, according to investment firm PIMCO. The US will more likely than not fall into recession within the next 12 months. Way before that, might I add. Reuters reported on Thursday, citing Andrew Balls, CIO of US-based investment management firm PIMCO. A recession is not the only important thing. You're clearly going to see a significant growth slowdown, Balls said at a press webinar, noting that the US Federal Reserve, along with many other central banks, is focused on battling inflation and not only economic growth. Man, you know that guy's last name was being used as a insult unto him during his younger years growing up, with such a last name, Balls. Hey man, I digress. Reading on. The inflation profile in the short term is very important. But you know what? In life, you have to have a lot of balls to do and say a lot of things, especially when it comes to professing the words of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai before the wicked. and the kingdom of the wicked. Okay, spiritually, that is. So, reading on, it says the inflation profile in the short term is very important. Central banks are focused on inflation and credibility, he said. Bowles noted that he considers recession probability in the U.S. in the coming year as close to 50%. Europe should also expect a recession, but the probability of this scenario there is even higher than in the U.S., Bowles warned, and as we'd read some articles supporting his sentiment. Now, before I read on, I want to give all praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Racha Kudash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me his truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom he so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom is scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you guys say Shalom and Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. This lesson is edifying, informative, concise. Reading on the article, in the European or in the Europe case, I think they will hike interest rates as they've laid out this year and get to positive rates. But it's really not clear that they get as far as the market is pricing in, he stated. Still, according to the CIO, the European Central Bank is likely to hike the rate to 0.75% to 1%, which will be a lot given the negative starting point. The ECB is expected to decide whether to raise rates for the first time in more than 11 years at the next policy meeting on July 21st in an attempt to rein in soaring prices. Recession is a period of economic decline when trade and industrial activity drop, which gradually leads to a fall in GDP. It may result from regulatory actions that focus on battling inflation instead of stimulating economic growth. For instance, with rate hikes since the start of the year, many nations, including the U.S. and most European countries, have been fighting soaring prices propelled by the Ukraine crisis and anti-Russian sanctions. Now more and more analysts warn that by prioritizing the fight against inflation over growth, these countries will inevitably find their economic growth slowing. This concludes the article. And again, this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 7, verse 19, because it's going to come to a point when the money is going to become worthless due to hyperinflation. Okay, when we're going to start to see the purchasing power, the value of their dollar, literally become worthless. Because you see, the U.S. dollar is an extrinsic asset. It receives its value externally through the global public's trust in it. But people have been slowly moving away from the dollar, so it's been losing its dominance. It's been losing its power. Okay, true money is gold and silver, things that are intrinsic, that has inherent value. Okay, cattle. They shall cast their silver, Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19, they shall cast their silver in the streets. Why? Because the money is going to become worthless, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. Right? So their silver and their gold, all the money that these people hoard up in the world, it won't be able to deliver them from the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. Because when our Lord returns, he's going to come back with vengeance to render his anger with fury, and as we beat with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many, as it is written in Isaiah 66, verse 15 on down. They shall not satisfy their souls, right? Because their goal won't be able to satisfy their souls in times to come, during the times of Jacob's trouble. Your gold and silver will not be able to deliver you from a hungry lion or a leopard or a cheetah. You can't pay a cheetah and say, "Hey, Mr. Cheetah, here's a couple $1,000s. You could take that and just leave me alone. That's not gonna help you. Just using that as an example. That's not gonna be able to deliver you from the wrath of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. You can't, take out a bag of money and say, "Oh, here, Lord, you take this, just save me." That's not gonna happen to people out here. Because when the Lord returns, he's gonna come back for his elect, and then he's gonna come back to also destroy the kingdom of the wicked and destroy 2/3 the heathens. So their gold and silver is not going to be able to satisfy their souls, not to fill their bowels, their minds. Give what? Relief, protection, comfort, because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. And what is iniquity? Sin upon sin. Verse 25, destruction cometh, and they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. Mischief shall come upon mischief, and rumor shall be upon rumor. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and the counsel from the ancients. So the time of Jacob's trouble is swiftly approaching, as well as the famine of the word. Though these things may seem as if they're tarrying, wait for they shall surely come to pass. They will not tarry, because the Most High is not a man that he should lie. So with that, I pray this lesson was informative and edifying to the elect. The Lord is willing, until the next, I say shalom to the elect.